Wafa, on va pouvoir commencer.
Ok.
Donc je vais commencer par vous remercier de votre présence en ligne et ici dans la salle à l'IFAO, à l'Institut français d'archéologie orientale. Donc la section française de la direction des antiquités du Soudan est ravie de vous accueillir tous et d'accueillir Wafa Hussein, qui est doctorante en archéologie préhistorique à l'école pratique des hautes études sous la direction de Claude Rilly. Elle est rattachée au laboratoire Lacan, donc langage, langue et culture d'Afrique. Et elle a commencé sa thèse en France après un master à l'université de Nilayne à Khartoum et a travaillé avec la CEFDAS entre 2019 et 2021, si je ne me trompe pas. Wafa participe également à plusieurs missions au Soudan, notamment sur les sites de Saï, de Sédinga et également de Mouweis. Donc, sa thèse s'intitule « Études comparatives des chaînes opératoires des céramiques mésolithiques et néolithiques des déserts orientaux et du Soudan central ». Je vais dire que Wafa est une étudiante chercheuse très impliquée dans le maintien des collaborations universitaires entre le Soudan et la France, et nous la remercions pour ça, très chaleureusement. Elle est associée à la CEFDAS et elle bénéficie actuellement d'une bourse de 2 mois dans notre institut. Donc sa présentation d'aujourd'hui elle va présenter une vue d'ensemble de son projet de recherche doctorale qui est axé sur les assemblages des poteries préhistoriques tardives du Soudan central et du Sahara oriental, en mettant un accent particulier sur les techniques de production et les traditions technologiques. Donc, merci beaucoup Wafa d'être avec nous aujourd'hui. Merci encore à vous tous d'être ici. Shukran jazilan, marhaba fil ma'had al-faransi. Et je t'en prie Wafa, the floor is yours.
Merci Séverine pour cette introduction. Donc, je vais continuer en anglais. I will continue in English, so it's more like stable language because we have like Arabic, English, and French. And yes, as Séverine said, I'm basically beginning, but now it's a bit different, and I will explain why during my presentation. So today I will present my ongoing research on a late prehistory ceramic from Sudan, which focusing on the production technique of Mesolithic and Neolithic context. So this presentation minorly explain how my research had to reconfigured after the outbreak of the army conflict in Sudan, and how I continue the work by using museum collection of stand of doing a field work in Sudan. So my PhD project started in 2021 as a co-tutel program between Nilayne University in Sudan and École pratique des hautes études in Paris. So the project was supported by CEFDAS from the beginning, which held a central role in making contact between the Sudanese and French institutions, and also including like the CNRS Laboratory of Lacan. The goal was not only to carry out a PhD and support the PhD program, but also to strengthen academic collaboration between Sudan and France. So this framework aimed to build long-term cooperation, allowing Sudanese and also French students to continue their research through shared institution support. So my PhD, it's a direct contacting with my master thesis, which focusing on Neolithic pottery from Eastern Desert of Lower Adbara River from Eder project. So while my master thesis focusing only on a Neolithic context and in one region, the Eastern Desert, I tried my PhD to expand both time period and geographic area. So my research is covering the period of Mesolithic and Neolithic and include both Eastern Desert and Central Sudan. This wider approach allowed me to make a comparison of pottery manufacturing practicing to understand the cultural connection and regional development during the late prehistory period. So my research tried to examine the transition between Mesolithic and Neolithic society across different regions and zones, with particular emphasis of the relationship between desert environment and Nilotic corridor. So I tried to investigate how ceramic production systems were shaped by local available resources, how geographic limit and environment condition influence of technological choices, and what extent contact between region or population movement contribute to the diversity of the Neolithic pottery traditional. So those questions are discussed with the current archaeological framework from late prehistory sites in Sudan, which rely mainly on radiocarbon dating, while recognizing that archaeological sequences is often a little bit or slightly different from region to other. So the entitled design of my PhD research focusing in two main regions, the Eastern Desert, represented by Eder Project, and Central Sudan, represented by Sabaloga East Project. So those regions represented different ecological setting and cultural paths, making them well example for comparative study for technological practicing and cultural development during the late prehistory period. In a methodological point of view, my study combined typological of the decorative motif analysis with the chaîne opératoire approach. So this framework allows pottery to be studied as a series of technical choices, each linked to the broader social traditional, with shared technology knowledge and process of cultural transmission. The typological classification based on decorative technique classification developed by Isabella Caneva in 1988. This is a key tools for identifying region cultural link and border chronological phase in Sudan. In my study, it really helped to place the ceramic assemblage from within the general chronological framework of Sudan late prehistory and highlight the regional difference over time. To complete the typological framework, the chaîne opératoire approach was used here to reconstruct all the sequences of pottery production, starting off collecting raw material and ending by firing. This method allows material under study to be classified according to technical choices, while also link them to the typology and chronological information. So the first phase of my research focusing on the material coming from Eder project, as I mentioned. Eder project is cooperation project between a Nilan University in Sudan and Wrocław University in Poland. So between 2016 and 2021, the project document more than 145 sites, including 35 to the late prehistory period. So my analysis focusing mainly on the material coming from site Eder 11, Eder 40, and Eder 47. So my research relied mainly on the field work with Eder project. This including survey of the site Eder 40 and Eder 47 that done during the field season of 2016 and 2018. And then test excavation to certain site, also including the site Eder 11, that done in 2021. So ceramic assemblage from those sites provide the main data of the technological analysis within a well-defined region framework dating between 6 to the 1st millennium BC. This material range allows to study of long-term change in the pottery production and technological practicing. In addition, comparative data come from fieldwork conducted with the Sabaloga East project. This project started in 2013, combined research and training involving archaeological students from Nilan University in systematic fieldwork. So far, about 120 sites have been recorded on this project, including 18 sites dating to the late prehistory period. For this study, I chose the site SP63 and SP120 were selected as a representative case study from this project. So between June and August 2022, a fieldwork was carried out in cooperation with a team from Nilan University. This work included the systematic survey and test excavation for the case study site to collect the archaeological material for my research. Excavated material was essentially for detailed technological analysis, as it's allowed to control destructive sampling, to expose fresh fracture and identifying production traces, which sometimes not possible with museum collection. During the second year of my PhD, additional fieldwork was carried out between December 2022 and March 2023. In this phase, I was focusing on classification the ceramic assemblage from other sites to build a database with systematically record of technological and typological data. So the classification focused on identifying broader technical pattern rather than relying only on typological of decorative motifs. At this stage, the research was mainly laboratory work by using direct access of the material that is stored in the laboratory of Sevdas at the National Museum in Khartoum. So this phase was of analysis was completely just 2 weeks before the outbreak of the army conflict in Sudan. So since April 15, 2023, the army conflict between Sudanese army forces and rapid support forces deeply affect all the intentional infrastructure in Sudan, including archaeological research activities. Beyond its severe impact on civilian life, including loss of life, violence, destruction, and displacement, the conflict has also greatly affected in the Sudanese historical and cultural heritage. Museums, archives, libraries, university facilities have been damaged or become inaccessible, leading to the major disruptions of the country research infrastructure. So, key institutions and library, including Sudan National Library and the National Record Office, were directly affected by the conflict, resulting of losing access to this collection and archive record. And this eruption also impact library essentially for archaeological research, such as the library of the Department of Khartoum University, Department of Archaeology at Khartoum University, and also the library of Sevdas and the ENCAM that house in the National Museum. So most of those resources are not digitalized, especially the material from the ENCAM library, which greatly limited the access for researcher work. However, as showing in this photo, the condition of those libraries it's better than essentially expected after the war. So really here I want to thank the ENCAM team who work on the ground for preserving and reminding references and data of these libraries. So while my personal situation cannot be compared to those who directly affected by the war, this situation required a major reorganization of my PhD research. The main challenging was administratively and also methodologically. And the question was how I can continue my research without having access to the material that's in Sudan. So the conflict occurred during the third year of my PhD, deeply affected both structure and progress of the project. So, like many Sudanese researchers, I also lived in with this concern that the safety of my family, friend, and colleague during this war. In addition, the sequences on my research was mainly on that the program of the Cototel could not be followed completely due to the political situation. So basically, I lost the Sudanese part on my project. The death of my co-supervisor, Professor Ibrahim Musa, further disrupted the cooperation with the Sudanese university. So as a result, my PhD continued just with the French university framework. Also, access to the key libraries and documentation in Sudan was lost, so required reliance on a personal library and support from a professor and colleague here in Europe. And the most effect on my work, it was to lose the access of the archaeological material from East Sabaloga project that is stored in Sevdas Library at the National Museum, which now likely looted or destroyed. All of this occurs during also the final year of my grant funding in France. So all this adding a significant pressure on me, while also the humanitarian crisis in Sudan continue to affect both civilian and academic community. But I was one of the few luckiest students who get a grant from Grade Henkel Foundation to continue my research, and recently also from Sevdas. So to respond to all those challenges, my research shifting towards to find alternative resources, mainly Sudanese ceramic collection held here in Europe, institution or museum. So during this process, I received strong support from different professors here in Europe, especially Professor Donatella Usai, who helped to make a connection with European museum and research institution. So after about 8 months of waiting, I obtained permission from Poznan Archaeological Museum to study ceramic assemblage from Kadaru site in Central Sudan, which is not really far from Sabaloga East. So that provided an important complement to my earlier fieldwork data. So these cases made it possible to carry out a third phase of the research fieldwork in the museum in Poznan. So between November 2023 and March 2024, I made like other field work for analysis the material from Poznan Archaeological Museum. So Kadaru collection including material that is excavated between 1970 and 2003, and it's hosted in Poznan Archaeological Museum. So this well-documented assemblage from both settlement and cemetery contexts become a key data for study and provide important information on production technique and cultural practicing in late prehistory period. For the settlement context, my analysis focusing mainly on the material excavated between 1972 and 1993. That's coming from section B, C, D on the site. Those assemblages are well documented, secure, stored in the museum, and supported by detailed excavation report. As a result, the available site layout information and excavation history allow to reliable context interpretation even without ongoing fieldwork. So the settlement material including a wide range of assemblage from both Mesolithic and Neolithic context that dating between the 7th to the 3rd millennium BC. And I was quite lucky to find also some petrographic analysis that done for this material and also all the field report. So one of the main challenging was to link the museum collection with their original excavation context. This requires extensive use of the historical fieldwork report, many of which are handwriting and in Polish language. While translate tools based on artificial intelligence were really helpful, handwriting reports remain difficult to translate, especially for details, spatial information. So as a result, in some cases, it was challenging to clarify the distinguish between Mesolithic and the phase of Neolithic context on the site. So for the cemetery context, the analysis focused on the material excavated between 1992 and 1994, covering 9 graves, including on this study. Unlike the settlement material, the cemetery ceramic are well documented, particularly on the 2011 Kadaru publication, which made it possible to reliably link the museum collection with their original excavation context. So reconstructing complete assemblage from individual grave was often not possible, as many vessels are now disappeared across different museums for expositions. So with this limitation, about 27 complete vessels were included to my study, providing important data for analysis production technique and complete vessels form. So one of the main methodological challenging was working with museum collections, because conservative rules do not allow the destructive sampling. The analysis was limited to the visible technical traces. As a result, detailed technological interpretation was possible just for 40% of the ceramic assemblage that I study in Poznan. So also the analysis of the complete vessels was particularly challenging because technological interpretation reliable only on the visible traces without access to the fresh fracture, except in one or two cases. So this limitation reduces the level of details in the technological reconstruction. Nevertheless, the study of complete vessels allowed to document a wide range of decorative motifs and technical practicing, showing that there was a diversity ceramic technology during especially Neolithic period. So those results will be presented in the future after my defense, inshallah, and once I just complete writing my thesis. So as a result of the conflict, museum collection became essential for continuing my PhD research. The inclusion of the Kadaru material collection was particularly important, allowing me to complete the main analytical framework of my thesis and to have like new data, because I lost the data that already restored in the National Museum from Sabaloga East. Working with the museum material made it possible to maintain comparative perspective between Central Sudan and Eastern Desert. Although the analysis was limited to non-destructive method, the technological interpretation remained meaningful and reliable. More broadly, the conflicts has deeply affected archaeological research in Sudan, restricting mobility for researchers, not just for the Sudanese researcher who is in Sudan, but also the Sudanese researcher who abroad. It's really difficult now just to make like movement for research study from country to other. Access to the library and archive and academic resources, much archaeological data, especially that's the data in Sudan, remained non-digitalized. And also for the data that digitalized from different institutions, some research in Sudan cannot have easy access to them through internet. So this research could not continue without all the support from like academic, international academic in Europe and also in US. So this project for representative just a case study of archaeological research conducted under the conflict of the war situation. While museum collection cannot replace fieldwork, they can play a certain central role in sustained research and preserve archaeological knowledge during period of army conflict. In the end, while protecting human history and cultural heritage, it's really important. The protection of human life is most almost. After more than 1,000 days of war in Sudan, civilians continue facing extremely hardship. So archaeological research cannot separate it from the life reality of the community to who those heritage belong. So I therefore encourage you to support and share information about Sudan and remind information about all those organizations on the ground provide assistance for civilians in Sudan. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Wafa. Merci beaucoup. Shukran jazilan. pour cette présentation. Est-ce que vous avez quelques questions ici ou en ligne? Oui, Roxane.
Hello, Wafa.
Hi, Roxanne.
Salam, yeah. I hope everything is well. Thank you for your presentation. Well, it was very, very interesting. But I have a question for the Polish papers that you use for your PhD that are handwritten. You don't have anybody that can help you translate that?
Well, I get some help from the colleague from the museum in Poznan, but I had like more than 9 or 10 reports, so I couldn't find like someone who completely free to do this work. So I get help to translate 1 or 2 reports, but not everything.
Une autre question. ممكن بالعربي لو عايزين.
ممكن بالعربي.
أهلا وفاء، بشكرك شديد على التقديم اللطيف للدراسة، وأتمنى أنك تقدري تتقدمي في الموضوع ده رغم الحاصل هسه حول البحث والحاصل في السودان. شكرا لك على التقديم اللطيف. تسلمي.
شكرا لك.
شكرا جزيلا. Merci. Ligne. Alors non, pas de question en ligne. Moi j'aurais une question, Wafa. بالفرنسي لو ممكن. J'ai eu l'opportunité sur les collections de Cadero de comparer le matériel céramique.
So I will answer in English.
Okay.
Never mind, because there's some people online.
Yeah.
So yes, in Kadaro I find like material from the cemetery, but basically I was working on Neolithic context, which always not complete like context. But in the beginning, my research was focusing just on the settlement to make like comparison between Eastern Desert and Central Sudan. But I find the opportunity of working on the cemetery collection, which provide a lot of information about technological process in that prehistory.
Question en ligne? Non, on a fait un appel, mais... Roxane dit merci beaucoup. S'il n'y a pas d'autres questions, je tiens à te remercier, Wafa. Merci beaucoup. C'était dommage que tu ne sois pas avec nous en Égypte. ممكن مرة تانية إن شاء الله أشوفك في مصر
إن شاء الله.
مرة تانية, je suis sûre, أكيد. Merci beaucoup pour ta présentation et évidemment tu es toujours la bienvenue ici et je vous remercie tous pour cette session de la première session de l'année des conférences de la CEFDAS. Espérons qu'il y aura d'autres, Inch'Allah. إلى اللقاء, à très bientôt. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup Séverine, merci à tous.
Merci encore. Shukran jazilan. Shukran, merci de la venue des personnes qui sont ici. Shukran jazilan. À bientôt, Wafa.